And per usual, we'll start with in question first.
Hey, Ime, I have 2 questions, just injury updates and the latest on Josh.
Josh is in health and safety protocol. That's where that stands. As far as injuries, Jalen is available.
And then just the emphasis today and the focus at practice, getting back from the West Coast swing, and you guys have challenging opponents coming up on this homestand.
Yeah, getting back to what we do well, what we did well all season prior to that trip, and areas we can improve from that trip. I had a long film session, touched on a lot of subjects that we didn't do well on the trip, and how we can get back to where we were before that. That was a focus.
Hey, man. You had mentioned the other night that you would consider changes to what you're doing, rotation and so forth. Have you decided on anything that way?
Yeah, well, the first thing is getting Jalen back is a big piece of that. Don't want to overreact to what we haven't had and make changes just to make changes. We'll see what we are back at, I would say, full strength, but Jay Rich is out now, so we still have some guys that we can tinker with, but more so lineups. We looked at rotations, which ones are the best offensively, defensively, in different areas, and as far as minutes and lengths of playing time, who's on the court together. So we'll insert Jalen back in, obviously, and not expecting him to save the world, but it's a huge piece of what we've been missing. And so offensively, that'll help. Defensively, that'll help, and it should help everybody all around.
You've talked about Jalen getting back to 100%. I mean, is his recovery each day now at 100%? I mean, do you
recovery as far as what? I'm sorry.
Well, he works out the next day. Oh. Does he bounce back pretty quickly?
Yeah, he's good. You could see the burst is back. Like as I mentioned, he's stepped it up throughout the week, especially on that trip. Really ramped it up, and he feels good after the workout. So that's the main thing: how his body recovers and where he's not having soreness or any tightness as he was when he came back for the games.
Okay. And you guys have had defensive breakdowns the last few games. I mean, that's got to be kind of maddening for you, considering what you're emphasizing. How do you fix that stuff? Is that just
go back to basics? And like I said, the film session, we touched on pretty much every subject defensively. What we did extremely well to start the season and to get us where we were at, and the slippage we had on the trip that got us from 3rd place to 10th, basically. I think we were 30th in the league on that 5-game trip defensively. And so had some poor starts, but fought our way back into most of those games. And that's when we started to guard. And so having that sense of urgency and the effort and attention to detail from the start of the game to not dig ourselves in that hole. And so it was minor breakdowns that we hadn't had in quite a while. So really touched back to the basics on that. Went over some drills that we've done in the preseason. And then, like I said, a long film session to emphasize all those areas that we can clean up and be in a different position in those games.
And just one last one. Obviously, you're missing a lot when you don't have Jalen. I mean, just how much does that help your offense to add him back in?
Yeah, I mean, it's 25 points you have to make up for, basically, minus the continuity and, what he brings to the team defensively and him being out there, how much it affects everybody else. You're relying on him to do so much, just like we do Jason and some of our other guys, playmakers, when we talk about Dennis or Marcus, whoever it may be. But him being on the court, the attention he draws, it gets everybody else open shots. So we understand what he is there as far as that. He's obviously a ton to miss, but some of those games without him were still very winnable games. And some of those teams that we played didn't have Booker, didn't have Aiden, didn't have Paul George, didn't have Lillard. So not an excuse. Those teams still have to play. And, we talked about Charlotte being -5 and winning a game last night against Sacramento, and Chicago being out with guys. And so everybody's going through it. Everybody's dealing with it. And we feel we have enough to win regardless. Just adding him back will be obviously an added benefit.
Couple Zoom questions, Coach. First from Bob Schrun.
Thanks, Jeff. Hi, Ime. Hi. Just to follow up on Murph's questions, I think you've touched on it. We're like 25 games into it. It's the time of season that I asked the question. your identity as a team. Can you talk about how you may have addressed that in the film session and coming off the trip? And obviously adding Jalen is huge to that.
The identity that we formed early on in the season, especially with guys being in and out, was we were going to rely on our defense. And we had done that and been in several games and won several games because of our defense, even on nights where we didn't shoot it as well. And so we really talked about that, relying on that area. We felt like we were in a good place, but kind of got away from that and started to talk too much about offense or focus on offense, especially with the 130 against Utah and the 145 against Portland. I think our focus shifted there instead of what we do naturally well and what kept us in games and won us games. So the identity obviously is to rely on defense, be a great defensive team, give ourselves a chance every night as far as that. And offensively get back to playing team basketball. And when shots start to fall, that obviously will help the case. Our assist numbers, our three-point percentage in general, all those will go up by made shots. So as I've said all year, making the right plays offensively, adding a 25-point scorer back will help there, but still being who we are defensively, night in and night out.
Brian, Rob.
Hey, Ime, I just want to follow up on Jalen. Is he, when he comes back Monday, is he expected to have a minutes limitation, and what has this progression been like in the last couple of weeks here with, the medical staff and just building up to a point where you guys think he's, able to kind of sustain this return here?
The restriction wise, we basically said when we get him back, we want him at 100. And, the more so than minute restriction for the hamstring is general, fatigue and conditioning. We'd like to keep him around the 30 mark, which was obviously higher than when he came back the first time around, I think it was 24 to start, and we ramped it up the 3 games he played. But, 30 mark would be ideal, I guess. It can always go over or under based on the game, but his conditioning, his ramp up, his level of intensity in those workouts was really hard on the road trip. Got a lot of playing in, got a lot of sprinting conditioning to really test the muscle fatigue and see how he felt the next day. And so he really ramped it up, and we feel very confident that he'll be here to stay.
And John Corrales.
Hey, Ime, I want to follow up on Josh. Was he able to travel from Phoenix? And secondly, there seems to be a lot of guys going into health and safety protocols around the league. Has there been any discussion about any changes to the, your protocol, the way things are being handled from the league to address that?
Regarding Josh, like I said, he's in health and safety protocol, and we'll leave it at that and not go into any detail on that. As far as the league, we have seen it. A bunch of teams have a bunch of guys missing. Yesterday specifically was a pretty hard day, and we addressed it with our team before the Phoenix game, how we have to tighten up. It's nothing league-wide that's been mandated or talked about yet, but you see the increases in numbers, and we just talked about tightening up everything with our team. Obviously, when you have a situation there, it brings attention to your team and league-wide as well. But we just got to be more strict on our protocols, wear our masks and be diligent about our process.
We'll wrap it up right there. Thank you, Coach.
Thank you.